Well, let's return again to that committee hearing today on the Indigenous Voice to Parliament referendum. Liberal MP Keith Wolahan is the Deputy Chair of that committee and he joins us now. Keith Wolahan, welcome to Afternoon Briefing. I heard you asking quite a number of questions today around the legality aspect, the concerns that there could be cases flowing from this, challenges in the courts, wanting to see how watertight this language around the constitutional proposal is. Were your concerns assuaged at all?
Well, this was day one of 5 public hearings. We'll also get many written submissions that are still open until the 21st of April. So our task is to have an open mind from all of the evidence, and I'm sure today will prompt others to put more in. You can understand those who are passionately in favour of the particular wording were good to go and they dominated the witnesses today. But I think in the coming days and in the submissions you'll see more witnesses that will make submissions that probably highlight risk to a greater degree.
I mean, many people would say you put a bunch of lawyers in a room together, someone's going to pick holes in an argument, or in this case, in a constitutional proposal. But hearing today from people like Kenneth Hayne, the former High Court judge, he seems to think that this is a fairly watertight proposal put there. How would you sum up someone like his position?
So I'm not going to sum up any one particular person's position. So I'll give you an example. The last witness we heard from was former Chief Justice French, and he made the important but obvious point that reasonable legal minds can disagree. In fact, the High Court disagrees on many things. That's why on many seminal cases it splits 4-3. So you can have former High Court justices very strongly hold a view on risk, but that doesn't mean that's going to be right. And you can assess that risk in a way that's respectful, and I think that's what happened today. And the key risk that was our focus was the obligation to consult. We weren't talking about veto, we weren't talking about excessive litigation. We're talking about if there is a right to make a representation to the executive, do you have that right, or does the voice have that right if it isn't told that there's a decision to make a representation about? So that was the narrow focus of the questioning today.
Your hearing today, of course, was here in Parliament House, but this committee is going around the country. It's not doing all of its work here in the nation's capital. Why is it so important for you to get out and about and go to some other communities to hear their views?
I think that's important because any amendment to the Constitution affects all Australians. So it's important that this committee travel, and we're going to be travelling to rural New South Wales, to remote Queensland, and then to Perth before coming back to Canberra. And I think that's appropriate that we do that. And that includes hearing from communities and remote Indigenous communities who obviously have an enormous say in what's happening before this committee.
You made the point that the committee is hearing these views in a respectful manner, these submissions from whether they be Indigenous leaders, lawyers, all members who are making contributions to the committee. Do you think, or is that a suggestion that outside of the committee room, some of the debate isn't as respectful at this stage?
I'll be very frank with you. When I make that point, it's not about particular leaders or politicians. The community is divided. So I'll give you an example. I sent an email to over 20,000 addresses in my electorate, and it was split down the middle, and many members are telling me the same. So I think it's important in the coming months and through to election day, we find a way to make Australians come through this in a way where we all respect each other, because we all have a fear that if we drag ourselves down into the mud, that's not good for the nation, and it's not good for the process of this referendum.
Inclination at this stage, in terms of how whether or not you would support the voice proposal?
So there's many reasons why you wouldn't. I'm going to wait until this committee process is done, but I have concerns about the principle of equality of citizenship, but most of my concerns are about constitutional risk. And there is a last chance for the government to address that risk. Of course, we'll hear witnesses that will have different views about how you quantify that. Some will say it's next to zero, some will say it's not very likely, or some will say it's probable. And we heard all of those today. I think when it comes to the Constitution, we should be risk averse, and there is an opportunity for the government to adjust the wording so it addresses that risk.
Do you think your party room colleagues are of the same position as you, wanting to wait for this process to play out, or are they more steadfast in their views?
We're a diverse party, so I'm not going to come on a show like this and speak for the party room. But people have come to their positions. Well, you could try, but people have come to their positions from a wide variety of reasons. There are those who are focused on the principle of equality of citizenship. There are those who are focused about whether this shifts the dial of Indigenous disadvantage. And there are those who are concerned about constitutional risk. That's where most of my concern is focused on, and we'll see what happens at the end of this process.
Well, Keith Wolahan, no doubt we'll talk to you a number of times on this process over the coming weeks and months. Thanks for joining us this Friday.
Thank you for having me.